Shivering from fear, I'm a 21-year-old Israeli tank gunner, fighting for my life, firing my cannon straight ahead at the enemy closing in. An endless series of artillery explosions rocks us, slowly crushing the hope of our four-man crew. I press a red button. The machine gun chatters endlessly. I turn around. Overwhelmed, my tank commander gives up on shooting back. He closes the hatch from which he's been observing the enemy. As his body thuds into the seat behind me, my shivering intensifies. I freeze. Without his eyes on target, we are blind, done, cooked. Little did I know then that what happened next would set the standard for great leadership, one that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. Suddenly, crackling over the radio, the rich, deep, calm voice of our battalion commander, Colonel Amnon. I want to see the enemy tanks burning. The calm in the tone of his voice paints calm all over me. I know in the core of my being that he believes in us. My shivering lessens. My tank commander straightens up, opens the hatch, sights the enemy. I fire again and again, willing them back with all my being. Suddenly, from nowhere, to our left, 30 enemy tanks coming at us. 3 times, Amnon calls for help. 3 times, silence. To prevent catastrophe, Amnon leads 4 tanks, smashing into the enemy force, destroying 7, scattering the rest. Silence. The battle over, their lives saved. Amnon rescues 12 casualties. On their way to safety, he climbs into a disabled tank and rescues a friend of mine left for dead. Every day since, I wondered, how did he stay so calm? Sitting in my gunner's compartment, smelling the cordite that engulfed us in an endless wave, my heart racing faster than it ever had. It took every fiber of my being to do one simple job: keep the crosshairs on target and fire. How did he set a standard of excellence for 5 jobs? And the inner strengths of character, the strategic vision plus the empathy to anticipate the enemy's moves, the flexibility to turn on a dime, the skill and courage to defeat overwhelming odds, the empathy to slow the racing hearts of soldiers under fire. Those inner strengths of character won the battle. 5 core inner qualities that made the difference. 5 core leadership powers that made history. Back then, I couldn't see the whole picture. To me, empathy and flexibility were signs of weakness. But what I did see was that leadership was everything. I determined to hone my own leadership powers. To me, that meant keep driving to hone the life skills that I would need to succeed at a standard of excellence. Always keep the big picture in mind to see what others could not, and practice the courage to do what others feared. That's what I did. I studied all the leaders I knew. I read about the ones I didn't, and practiced the leadership I'd seen in battle that day, every day, at home, in the community, and at work. Because of that, 33 years later, I was asked by the world's largest peer group organization for leaders, Vistage International, to mentor CEOs on great leadership. Dissatisfied, missing something, uncertain what it was, exhausted from working every possible minute to keep the flashbacks and bloody scenes from my mind's eye, I needed the calm. In his deep, rich voice, Amnon painted word pictures of the Gadi he'd seen leading in battle. "You're empathic," he said. "Lead people that way." I didn't believe him. Until that minute, I'd lived my life determined to bury the unbearable weakness of my own sensitivity. That comment started 10 years of mentoring that challenged me to lead from the highest version of myself. When I think about our victory in that war, Amnon says, the image that comes to mind is you, hand thrusting your trophy rifle skyward in triumph over the enemy. Now, to a tank gunner firing my cannon, that little infantry rifle symbolized the leadership power of flexibility. Mentoring my CEO clients, I added the leadership powers of flexibility and empathy to my existing leadership powers, power pack of strategy, skill, and courage. When I did that, I shifted from lecturing them about what was wrong to focusing on what was right. I learned that great leadership is about more than having the courage and skill to implement a good plan. I saw lots and lots of different leadership powers. Some leaders had foresight, where others led from the seat of their pants. Some could paint word pictures that helped people buy in. Others had a gift for numbers that helped quantify risk. Some were methodical, others were intuitive. Some were resourceful at problem solving. Others were innovative at finding whole new ways of doing things. Some were collaborative and created consensus. Others led by example. Some understood and motivated people. Others were more technical. Some could stay calm when everybody was losing it. Others were energetic when people were down. Some were authentically warm. Others were curmudgeons who cared. On and on it went, over 100 different powers that I've identified. During 7,000 hours of coaching hundreds of CEOs, the pattern I saw over and over was this. When leaders were at the top of their game, in the zone, effortless and timeless, was when 5 core leadership powers, unique to them, working together like the blades of a propeller, drove them forward to great leadership. However, before they got there, their journey might have started something like this, when they were using and overusing only 1 or 2 of their powers. That was when they wrestled with decisions and doubted themselves. They were not showing up the way they wanted to. Their relationships suffered. They felt overwhelmed. Everything seemed to need Herculean amounts of push and energy. Some of them confessed to secretly feeling like frauds. Some were on the verge of burnout, and yet they knew there was more to do. Over and over again, I saw that when leaders overcame their resistance to feeling inward, practiced and embodied and accepted and lived the 5 core leadership powers unique to them, their unique leadership style emerged. Their doubts and frustrations melted away. They stopped having to push so hard. They instinctively knew what to do. They were real and knew it. Re-energized by their unique leadership makeup, they started leading with ease and calm. They showed up as who they truly were. Their teams saw them that way. Their relationships went from challenging and stressful to supportive and nurturing. And they started making the impact they always knew they could make. Here's an example. Tim was a partner of a niche global manufacturing company, a wiry, tenacious Marine. He loved solving tough problems, the tougher, the better, and enjoyed defanging the toughest, most ornery buyer you could find. For relaxation, Tim would hike 100 miles up and down the Appalachian trails with a full backpack. Inside, he often wondered if it was worth it. Frustrated with his volatile partner, a problem even he couldn't solve. Way too distracted with work to enjoy being home. Irritated way too much by traffic. He felt trapped in the city. Afghanistan was starting to look good. Working with Tim, I pointed out that in addition to his leadership powers of tenaciousness and problem solving, his ability to befriend the toughest buyers was an outcome of his leadership power of empathy. His frustration with his partner was aggravated by his leadership power of fairness, and his respect for all, regardless of their station in life, was a leadership power that enabled connection. When Tim stepped in and he embodied his full leadership pack, which was his great problem-solving ability, his absolute tenaciousness, his empathy and sensitivity, his sense of justice and fairness, his respect for all. He felt the calm that comes with living the highest version of himself. Fully living his 5 core leadership powers, he sold his company and left the city for South America on a 2-year mission trip, providing medical care for the poor. It's different for every leader. What all of us as leaders have in common is that when you identify and embody your 5 core leadership powers, your doubts vanish, your anxieties dissipate. You stop wasting your life. What I've learned from myself and other leaders and high achievers, many of us are driven to lead and to achieve, to mask the pain of an early experience. And because of that, we avoid the inner experience. At some point, there's not enough achievement to mask it. And I've identified 5 stages that we have gone through in reconnecting with ourselves and the 5 core leadership powers within. Often, like me, there's a denial. Then there's a desire to minimize our own strength and our own power. Then we avoid it. Finally, with no choice, we start to accept and embody it. This journey of connection with our inner strengths is typically the thing we try last when all else has failed. And sometimes people's life is in a shambles by the time we get there. If you're at the point in your life where you're called to be a really great leader because you know there's one inside and you're not showing up the way you want to, it might be the time to uncover your 5 core leadership powers, integrate them into your leadership, and become the great leader you're meant to. The first step is overcome our resistance at stage 1 and ask yourself, what parts of myself are not fully expressed? Know that you belong, you're loved unconditionally, you are not alone. There is help along the way. When you have the courage to fully connect with all parts of yourself and activate your 5 core leadership powers, is when you too will feel the calm in the tone of your voice. You too will make the history you're here to make. Thank you.